Currently, we have people scattered all over Australia, some 10, 11,000 kilometres from Tanzania right now, but they've got your coffee in their hands and they're about to taste. You reside in Portland. What was your journey to owning Acacia Hills? Why Tanzania?
It wasn't the most attractive because of how far it is from me, but it just, I've been everywhere around the world, and I think it's truly what the Africa used to have. Their slogan was the world's wildest coffee. That is our farm. What really struck me was I just looked at it as this is just a paradise. I mean, it was so beautiful. The coffee was excellent, but it was so raw. It's like looking at a great coffee, but you see a diamond in the rough. And up until recently, until we fenced the farm, we used to have elephants and buffalo roaming through, and we had to cut that off because they were killing most of our coffee. I met Leon and Aiden. We just became friends and wanted to do a long-term investment and look at what a real partnership might look like from somebody from the coffee roasting side to a coffee grower.
Leon and Aiden, firstly, the name Christianakis doesn't sound Tanzanian. Can you tell us briefly what brought you to Tanzania, and then from there your journey to owning Acacia Hills Estate?
Hello, this is Leon and Aiden Christianakis of Acacia Hills. My surname is a Greek surname, and we're lucky enough to have lived here as a family for 3 generations in Tanzania. My grandparents moved from Greece in the late 1800s to the early 1900s.
Hello, I'm Aiden Christianakis, and Leon and I met at university in Dublin. We both did training as pharmacists. After qualifying, we decided we would rather make a life in Tanzania. So we upped sticks and moved to Tanzania in 1996. And we started growing coffee near Arusha. Leon and I decided we'd like to look at establishing a second coffee farm, and Mark was looking at owning a farm at origin. So having spent quite a bit of time looking around the slopes of Mount Oldiani near Ngorongoro crater where Acacia Hills is situated, we eventually came across a farm for sale, which is Acacia Hills.
We've had a relationship for probably over 7 years now. So from your perspective, how does this impact you? How does this relationship impact you? And what does it mean for your business, for your coffees?
Well, yeah, I think I met one of your buyers at a Gems of Araku coffee event in India, and we just started chatting, and I think you saw what we saw, is that there's such a potential for this coffee.
Acacia Hills has certainly developed a wonderfully strong relationship with 5 senses, and the word relationship is key here. This relationship year on year has given us, as a grower, income stability. It removes a great deal of uncertainty in what's a wildly fluctuating coffee market.
You guys in general were looking for such great quality and a great partnership that it naturally pushed us to explore options that we wouldn't have normally done, which obviously what you were going to cover today is one of those things, which is we went out and sourced some of the best Panama geishas and El Salvador Pacamaras and brought them in and planted them, and it's 7 years later. So essentially it's taken that long to kind of get some volume.
They've challenged us to try different processes, and we feel now we are beginning to succeed on this. So some of these coffees you will cup here today. It'll be interesting to see what you think.
Okay, one thing that really stood out to me while I was there was the impact that you guys have on your local community.
When we took over the farm, the farm had almost been abandoned. On the first day, I remember we had 7 people employed. Now, generally, it is a little bit seasonal, but generally we run at about 140 people per day. And that, of course, is not without, when it's harvest season, the labor force can peak up to 300 people.
One of the things that we did about 6 years ago was we did an assessment in the area. There's about 2,000 plus people that live around the farm, and the main assessment thing that came out of this assessment was that 25% of our workforce is always sick from waterborne illness. We also discovered that the average house was walking 6 hours a day for water. It wasn't even a thought. It was like, how can we share this? How can we bring it down? How can we get it funded? So we went out and did some fundraising. Obviously, you guys helped participate in that. And we brought water down almost 2,000 meters by pipe to the actual village. So we look at it as, we want to be great stewards of the area, but we also thought that reality is we need this from our business practice, because we need workers, we need pickers, we need to be healthy, and we want to give back. And this was clearly the easiest and most eye-popping kind of thing we could have done.
Mark, through his coffee experience, realized it's not much good if one farm turns things around, and roasters and buyers would like to visit an area.
We started doing a cupping at the crater with just one other farm, because he's a friend of ours. He's about maybe 40 minutes away. And I mean, since that time, which is I think 2011, 2012, when we first started this, the cupping at the crater, now we have 6, 7 farms. We split where we go every day. We cup everybody's coffee. We give great feedback. The reality is us sharing that information and sharing who we're selling to and what their scores are and how they're pushing us to do these things better. It's just, we've seen a really good gradual increase of everybody's quality. And not only that, the competition to find out, well, why are they getting an 88 or a 90 of some coffee? What do they do? I always consider it like an adopting a region, and you guys are a prime example of that, where you've kind of adopted us as someone you want to help, polish, I guess, in terms of quality.
So to see your nursery and all the seedlings and the different varietals and the experiments that you're doing, can you talk through how you've approached, the experiments and learning what works on your farm? Because it seems like you're starting to do a lot of that sort of stuff.
So when we took over the farm in 2007, we found very few records, but subsequently we've established that mainly the variety we found there was Kent.
So one of the things right now, I think we have about 10 varietals in the nursery and planted throughout the area. And back when the first coffee was planted, it was one varietal is whatever they could get. In terms of varietal, it's a Kent varietal. It's a decent coffee, but it can be so much better. We have such amazing soil, and of course with global warming, things have changed quite a bit in terms of rainfall and shade. Well, let's start figuring out what grows. We'll plant a little bit at a time, see how it goes over time. And that's how it has to happen. It's like, what varietals of wine works in certain areas. It's the same thing with coffee. We don't know if our terroir will work long term with a particular plant, but we're going to try.
We felt very much like pioneers, because not many new varietals are grown in Tanzania. So it was a long process of just waiting, and once the coffee started being produced, we could obviously get cupping feedback.
And year on year, the feedback improved. Our first few years, when we first started cupping varieties like Acacia, which we were really excited about, sadly the cupping results were a bit poorer than we expected. And as the plant matures and our yields are going up, thank goodness the cupping scores are also going up. And then finally, the last variety we're just looking at right now, through some farms in Kenya and advice from some of our Kenyan neighbors, is SL28.
Yes.
And we have some seedlings in the nursery ready to go in as we speak, or being planted as we speak right now, because we're in the middle of our rains here in Tanzania, and we've had wonderful rains this year. So SL28 will be rolling out in the next couple of years as well.
And you introduced the Gesha and the Pacamara to the farm, more than 4 years ago or whatever. How have they been travelling, especially the Gesha? It's typically known as a low-yielding variety. The honey process can be really tricky. How was the harvest this last year?
So it's really low yield. We have two types of geishas, right? We have the green tip and the red tip. We bought them from two different areas and in Panama, And so we have our 2 mother gardens, as they call it, which was about 4,000 plants each when we first started. So everything we plant we plant from those, so that we don't lose that the initial genetic strain or whatever. We've learned that, if we don't really baby these things for at least 3 years, they can die off pretty quickly, and it's really tough to maintain a new planting. And with the Pacamara, it's different. It's just such a healthy Bourbon type of tree that you're just like, it was naturally there for it. There are always issues with the first several years of planting and it not having enough water, where we used to have rivers year round. We don't anymore. So we have to store in big water vats to hopefully Bowser water at some point. We don't do irrigation. It's all natural. So all of those are things that we, that we're learning with these new varietals, I think.
I think you asked about the honey process with the geisha. It is very new. We're learning as we go along. The problem in Tanzania, I might have mentioned before, is you always feel a little bit on your own. So we use the internet. We listen to people who come to visit the farm. So it is a bit of a challenge, the honey process, because of course it takes quite long. Our skill level of our local workers there is pretty low. So it's a work in process, but I'm encouraged by the little feedback we've had from 5 senses. So it is definitely varieties and processes that we will be looking at closely in the seasons to come.
All your hard work and bringing these coffees to life. We are really proud to represent them here in Australia. And we're really thankful for the relationship that we have with you all. So stay well, and all the best for the next farming season.
Great, thank you.
It's not exactly related to the question, but as Jay saw on his last visit, we've gone to quite some expense to put an electric fence around all our present coffee area and some of our future coffee area, because we had the wonderful problem where elephant and buffalo would come in every evening and help themselves to our coffee farm, in that they're just big animals, so obviously there was some destruction. But this fence has gone in. It's been very effective in keeping the animals out. They still visit the farm every day. We've managed to keep them out of the coffee area.
What's lovely is because of the blocks that we've fenced, we've created corridors between the blocks, and so now we can actually see, we can sit on certain points of the farm and see how the animals move. They're still large areas, but these corridors have been hugely successful, and so it's a nice result of farming commercial crops next to wildlife, and neither impacts on the other.